We covered switch. We covered if else statement. We covered switch, and then discussed about packages and access modifiers. So have you practiced in any of these topics? At least raise your hand. I'm audible, right? Okay. So yeah. So and after if else, we'll focus on loops. And I mean, I'll discuss about it like for 2 minutes, and then we'll move to exceptions. So tell me, why do we use loops? Like, what is the purpose of using them? Why anybody should use loops? Like, what is the use of them? You all know about loops, right? At least you heard about it. I am assuming that all of you are from computer science background. So even if you are not from computer science background, you should know the meaning of loops, right? Why we use loop? Like, what is the meaning of it? Can anyone say? Someone is typing. Why we should use loops? Like, what is the need of loops? No one is answering. Okay, to execute set of statement until the condition is false. Yeah, you are correct, Subash. And yeah, so if you want to do a particular task repeatedly until it reaches some point, you want to execute it, you want to execute some set of statements, or you want to perform a task repeatedly, then you will use loops. And one thing you need to focus on while doing loops is the condition, because loops iterate in the sense it will execute. So one iteration in the sense one time execution. So it, like you say you want to print a number 10 times. So you will keep that number inside the loop, and you will write some condition like until it reaches 10, you need to print that loop. Okay. So yeah. So whenever you are writing loops, you need to focus on the condition. That is because whatever the condition you kept, it should be terminated at some point. I mean, it should become false at some point. Otherwise, it will lead to infinite loops. Infinite loops means what? The program will never stop. It will keep on executing, which is like a waste of memory, and it is not at all recommended. So whenever you are writing loops, you should focus on the condition, and that condition should be terminated at some point, or that condition should be false, because this loop will execute until the condition is true. Let's say, let me write it an example. Okay. We'll discuss the syntax too. So there are three types of loops in Java, that is while, for, and do while. So let's discuss about for just now. So in for we have, this is the for loop. Name of the loop is for. So how do you write this loop is, we'll have three statements inside this one. Three statement. So first one is initialization. Like you can assume it like the start, like where do you start? Okay, you can assume it like the start of the loop. Like where do you start your loop? At what point you will start your loop? And the second one is condition, which is very important. And the third one is either increment or decrement. You can also call it as, we also call it as step. Okay. So how does this happen? You will start at some point. and you will keep a condition. Let's say you will start at 0 and you will keep a condition like it should terminate at 10. You will increment it by 1, right? What happens if you decrement? See, if you start at 10 and your condition is until it becomes less than 10, what happens if you decrement this by -1? It will be forever less than 10, which will lead to infinite loop. So you should increment it. Okay, so based on the condition, you should increment or decrement it. I mean, it should terminate somewhere. If you keep -1, it won't terminate. It will keep on decrementing, which is always less than 10. So yeah. So inside for we have three statements. The first one is the start or the initialization. Second one is the condition. Third one is the step. That is either increment or decrement. So this statement you declare at the start of the loop will be executed every time. Every time in the sense until the loop ends, like let's say you have 10 iterations here, 0 to 10 plus 1 means 10 times. So 10 times the statement will be executed. That is you need to understand that thing. So every time, like first it will start at 0 and then when you say plus 1, for the next time it will become 1. And it will again check the condition if it is less than 10, and if it is less than 10 it will execute whatever the statements that are there inside this for loop. I'll make it with an example so you will understand much better. So yeah, you can start with me so it will be easier for you. Okay. Since I am being very slow, you can do parallelly with me so you won't get bored or sleepy. If you keep on like staring at the screen, you will be bored. Sometimes you will become sleepy too. So let's say public. What is the main method? Public static void main string. uh, So I'm going to write a for loop. For. So as I said, we'll do a simple loop right now. So int I equal to 0. This is what the initialization. I'm starting. You can keep any variable here. You can keep like start or let's say start else. So in start equal to 0 and start less than or equal to 10, start plus plus. These operators you should know. We call them as unary operators. That means he. So if you can keep start plus plus, that means it will be incremented by 1. Even if you keep here, if you can also keep start equal to start plus. Both are same, but instead of writing this much, we'll just keep start plus plus. So you understand the statement. First one is initialization. So whenever you initialize a variable, how do you write it? You will write it first the variable type, that is data type, followed by variable name and initialization. That means you can initialize it with any value. Since we are starting here with 0, I initialized it with 0. And what is our condition? Until the start reaches 10. So we are going to, so this loop will execute 10 times until it reaches 10. We'll increment it by 1. So first these two will be executed, and whatever that is inside, let's say I'll print it dot output println. I'll print the start. Okay. So you will know how the start value changes. So initially what is start value? 0. Now I'm printing the start value, keeping it in a loop. So it started from 0 and it reaches until it reaches 10, it executed 10 times. So the start value is changing, right? Start value started from 0 and it keep on changing. And see, first it is 0 and it will print that after checking the condition. Only after printing it, this will increment by 1. This will increment by 1 and again it will check the condition if it is still less than 10. So after reaching 10, it will again check the condition. That is, I mean, after printing 10, it will increment by 1. So it will become 11 and it will check if it is still less than or equal to 10. It is not, where the condition fails. So the program will stop executing. What happens if I keep minus minus here? See, it won't stop. It will be forever executing. Okay? You should not do that. So that is why you have to check the condition whenever you started a loop. You need to check the condition. Okay? Mm. So this is for loop. You can do, I mean, so many. Someone asked me out. Okay, okay, fine. Yeah. So this is for loop. You can try different things actually. This is like very very basic example. To let you know the about syntax, I explained about it. And shall we move to while loop, or do you have any doubts in for loop? Or you want me to explain another example? If you want another example, I can say. Just raise your hand if you want another example. Raise your hand if you want another example, or okay, nobody want another example. So we can move to uh, this person, Latanjali. Uh, okay, fine. We'll move to for loop. Actually, we'll have nested loops also, like one loop inside another. You can even write if inside this, you can write for inside it, you can write while. Like the set of statements we'll have inside a for loop. I mean, inside a loop, you can do many things. You can even write another loop too. If there is a loop inside another loop, we call it as a nested loop. So, see, okay, we'll and there is something called for each loop. I'll tell you an example and I'll move to. So let's say I have an array here. So even for loop also, if you have only single statement, you don't need to keep the brackets. Okay? So let's say I have for each loop. So for each loop is used basically with arrays lists, like when you want to access those items directly, you will use the for each loop. Let's say I have an array int a. So this is how you declare your array. Mm, okay. So we got an array. Now using for each, we'll iterate this. Iterate in a sense, using for each loop, you will visit each and every element. Starting from 10 to 45, you will visit every element. So for in I, let's print this. See, in for each, I'll tell you the difference between for each and for. Wait a minute. So here I declared an array and int I. I initialize this. So now this int I is referring to elements in A. Okay, this is the syntax. Here, this is the iterator. You can keep anything here, and this is the list or array or whatever uh, the data structure you want to traverse. Traverse means you will visit each and every element. I am printing the type. Let's see what happened. So it printed every element. So what happens? This I is what the value of I is 10, 20, 30, 40, 45. Similarly, if you use for loop, this I will point to index for the same array. So I'll print the same I. In for each, it will point to element directly, but in for loop, it will point to index, and I'll show you how. Index means you all know, right? We have in array, we'll have indexing. That means every element has some position, some number. The position of 10 is 0. So in every data structure, any programming language, indexing starts with 0. That means the position of every number. Why they introduce this indexing is it will be easier to access elements actually. See, if you want to access 30, or if you want to access, let's say I want to know which element is present at position 3, then I can easily say a of 3. A of 3 means you will write like this, a of 3. What is the thing that is in a of 3? 40, because indexing starts with 0. Position of 10 is 0, 20 is 1, 30 is 2, 40 is 3. So if you want to access a position, if you want to access any number at a particular position, you will say that array of that position number, or index we'll call, generally we call it as index. So if you know the index, you can easily access the elements. See. So this is a first for each loop where I is pointing to elements directly. So in this for loop, it is pointing to index. So if you want to print the elements, then how do you put it? You will put a of I. As I said, a of index. Here I is index in for loop. So that is, that is the difference between for and for each. Okay. This is for each. For each, in a sense, it will point to each element. For will point to index until the end we will travel. So if I see, now it is printing the elements. So if you want to print the elements, you will keep a of I. That is a of that index. I value changes from 0 to that length of the array. That means 0 to 5, I guess. Yeah, 0 to 4. So this is the difference between for and for each. And while it will be the same again, there is a syntax I'll tell you. Right? While. So while. So for while we need to let's say I'll initialize it with 0. In while we have only one statement inside it, that is condition. Unlike for, it won't have 3 statements. It will have only one statement. Let's say the start is less than 10. So start initialize, I initialized it with 0, and till it reaches 10, I want to print it that start. I want to print that start. And you need to specify the increment to separately. In for, you will have the initialization, condition, increment or decrement in the same line in for here. But in while, you have to initialize it separately, specify the condition here, and while is the keyword, and inside the statement, you will either increment it or decrement it. Start equal to start. I am just incrementing it by 2. Okay. Yeah. So this is a while loop. For while, you will keep the condition here, and either increment or decrement, you will do it inside this. Okay. So while this statement is true, while this condition is true, it will execute. So whenever this condition fails, after reaching 8, what happens? It will print 8 here, and then start equal to start plus 2. Start becomes 10. So again, it will go to line 13 after executing line 15. Now in line 13, it will check, is 10 less than 10? No, which is false. So it will terminate. So here also you need to keep the condition correctly, otherwise it will lead to infinite loop. I think you are clear with while loop. These are very easy topics, so I am moving quick. If you're confused, you can stop me and you can ask me. I'll repeat it with another example. Okay. And do while loop is the same actually. You will keep do here. Okay, I'll copy it. So that is, you will start here and you will keep the while here. You will keep the condition actually at the end. What happens is, I'll tell you the difference also. And here you'll have a code. So you need to remember this colon. Okay, this is like generally by mistake we'll forget the colon many times. That's fine. So yeah. So difference between this for, while and dual is, in for and while you will check the condition at the beginning. Like before entering the loop, you will check that. Like let's say how you check it the ticket before entering into a movie. Like that, this for and while will check the at the entry. But this do while will check the condition at the exit. That is, it will first execute whatever that is there, and after executing, it will check the condition. You got my point? Before even executing a single statement in for and while, the condition is checked. See, even if the condition is false, in do while, it will execute at least once. But that is not the case in for and while. If the condition fails, it won't even execute one time. But even if the condition fails, it will execute at least one time. That is because you kept here start less than 10. Let's say I'll have 10 here, start equal to. What happens if I keep while here, while start less than 10, then it won't execute even one time. But in while, it will execute. That is because I kept the condition at the end. So when you want your program to execute at least one time, then you can use do while in such cases. So this is how it goes. Everything is same, just the condition and the syntax slightly differs, but the functionality, like how they work, is the same. Okay. So this is the loops, and yeah, you can practice them on your own. See if you got any doubts, I'll wait. Just ask me. What type of iterations can we use continuous statement? Give an example. Yeah, sure. Okay. Um, okay, first I'll tell them about it. So we have two keywords called break and continue. I think we already discussed break yesterday, but I'll tell again. So break is like, see here what we are doing, we are iterating like continuously, right? Like let's say 10 times I just printed I. So if you want to stop at 5 suddenly, then you can use the break statement there. So whenever you say break, it will stop the execution unless the condition is a true, false, it won't check the condition. It will just stop the loop. And if you keep a continue, let's say I have 10 iterations and I want to skip some step. Skip in the sense I don't want that particular iteration, I don't want it to execute. Let's say I'm printing 1 to 100 and I don't like the number 99. I want to skip that 99. Then at that point, I'll keep continue. So it will just skip one step in a loop. But break, it will break the loop. I'll show you an example. We'll keep this in so here what I'm doing, you all know, right? I'm printing 1 to 10. Right? See. I'm printing 1 to 10. You all clear with this, right? Now I want to break at 5. I want to stop. I want to stop. I don't want any more. I don't want to go further. So I'll keep if start equal to 10. And I'll simply keep break. That means the loop will terminate. So I'll execute it. Wait. What happened? Okay, I'll keep start equal to 10, right? I need to keep start equal to 5. At 5, I want to terminate. So I kept if start equal to 5 break. So it stopped after 5, after printing 5. Okay. So now if you want to skip that only 5 and you want to print other numbers, then you should say continue. I'll show you. So if start equal to 5, you will say continue. It is very simple. You just need to keep the keyword. See, it skipped 5 and it printed other numbers if you can see on the console. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, only 4, and it didn't printed 5. And you need to remember one more point is if you keep this print statement here, it won't skip there if you observe. So I'll tell you why, because continue, the functionality of continue will skip whatever that is there below it. See, after after the JVM finds this continue, it will search for the below statements. If there are any statements here, if they, oh sorry. So if there are any statements here, after continue, it will skip those steps. So whatever the steps you want to skip, you need to keep that after that. That is, they are not inside if, it is outside if only, but you need to keep them after continue. This is if. Okay. So if condition and then continue, and below the where there are, if there are any steps, it will skip those steps. If you keep above it, it won't work. So you need to remember that thing when writing loop, when using continue. So I think you got the difference between break and continue. Anything else? And like say, if you when you can use break is, let's say you are searching in a college database or school database, you are searching for a name. So what you will keep the condition here until all the students completed. Let's say there are 100 students, and you at 50 or at like 10, at 10th student you found the students, you found the student, like the correct student whom you want to found. Then there is no point in going further. Then you will say, then you can use break. Like I've been saying the example where you can use the break. Okay. Yeah. Anything else until now? Or I'll move to exceptions. Unmute yourself and ask, or else you can keep that in chat window. Any short notations used for? I didn't get your thing. You mean, what do you mean? Any short notations used? I mean, like if else, is that what you like? If else we wrote in a shorthand notation in like in a single line, is that what you're asking? Yeah, I'll tell you. Uh, Actually, there is no shorthand notation for loops in Java. We have another programming languages in Python, and yeah. There is no shorthand notation. You just need to write these three statements because these three statements are are necessary. Because this is where you start the loop and then start, end, and the condition. These three statements are like the three conditions where the loop is based on. So you don't have any shorthand notations for. Even while also we don't have any short notations. You just exclude those brackets if you have a single statement, and then you will write it. Oh, anything else? I mean, sometimes you can skip the initialization. You can just if that is already initialized of, or if there is, like, let's say I have start I have the start value somewhere above the program. Let's say I have here, or where somewhere I use start, I have start equal to some value, let's say 99. Then I can use this start here. Okay. I mean, somewhere if it is already initialized, then I can use that I can use the value of it in loop. Anything else? You don't want to use like, let's say if you don't want to use for loop, you can use for each while dealing with arrays list, like that. It means it is kind of shorter compared to for loop. For each, you just like point that index here. Where is it? Where is the for each? Here. So it is like you'll point directly to the element instead of its index, so it will be quite somewhat smaller compared to for loop. And there is no other way of shorthand. Anything else apart from this? So, or else should I move to exceptions? Okay, I guess everything is fine. So yeah, I'll move to exceptions. Okay, where are we at? Actually, it is not there in our project, this for loop, but like to know the basics, I included it in. So anybody know about exceptions or errors? Like, what are they? Exception. What do you mean by exception? At least, have you heard this word before? Exception. You can already read it on my screen actually. So, like, there is a flow of this program, right? It will execute from 1 to 10 steps, and at some, like, let's say in line 6 or 7, there is some error or something that will cause the program to stop abnormally. Abnormal in the sense, how do you, let's say you are dealing with files, you open a file and you start reading that, and there is something that caused the error, and it caused the entire program to stop abnormally, like everything is left, all the resources that were allocated to the program, uh, and all the files that were used, like they are left open, they are left, so like that abnormally, everything will be stopped. Errors at runtime. Yeah. So errors at, then what do you mean by runtime? So what do you mean by runtime and compile time? Actually, we'll get errors at compile time and sometimes runtime. So can anybody say like why some? That is because some errors will be caught at compile by the compiler. So we have two stages, right? Compilation first, and then interpretation. You all know the difference between compilation and interpretation, right? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So compilation means you will execute everything from, let's say you have 10 lines of code, you will execute all the 10 lines at a time, and you will see, you will throw all the errors that were there at a time. Let's say you got errors at 1 9, then after all the program is executed, you will show these errors. But coming to the interpretation, you will execute it line after line. That means if you have some error at line 1, it will move to a next line. It will show that you have error at line 1. It will move to the next line only after the error at line 1 is resolved. That is interpretation. Okay. um, So like Python is, if you know about Python, Python is an interpreted language. Java is both compile and interpretation language. In the first stage, Java compiler will compile it, where you will get the class file. So, and then this JVM, Java Virtual Machine, will do the interpretation thing. So, so Java compiler cannot do everything. It has the ability to find some errors at the compilation time. So those errors which can be found at compilation, the first stage, we call them as compilation errors. And let's say there are some errors which can't be found during compilation by the Java compiler. Those will be caught by JVM at the interpretation time. Those we call them as runtime. So errors that were detected by the JVM, we call them as runtime errors. If there are some errors at compilation time, we got the errors at compilation time, we can, I mean, we must handle them. There is a need to handle them. That is where the exception handling comes. So whenever I say the program starts, error comes, that is mean they're all come under exceptions. I'll tell in detail, don't get confused. So the compile and we have interpretation. Okay. Don't be confused. This topic may lead you to like confusion, but just ask me whenever you get it out. Okay. So as I said, some errors will be caught by the Java compiler. Okay. Here it will be caught by JVM. This is the first step. This is the second step. Okay. So let's say some errors are caught here. Errors in the sense, where you will do some, probably some, you might not know that you are doing it. Let's say you are dividing a number with 0, 5 by 0. Is it meaningful? It is not. It is an error. It will cause the program to stop abnormally. Or let's say you are trying to access a file which is not there. You will say open file.open of or file.read. You gave some file. Let's say file.read of, you gave some file name which is not there. Actually it will search for it, right? Whenever you give a file name, it will search in the directory if that file is there or not, and then that file is not there, it will throw you an error, file not found exception. And then just now we discussed about arrays. Let's say I have only 4 elements and you are trying to access the 5th element by giving an array of 5, which is again an exception. So these are the kind of errors you will be. Okay, wait. Not this one. Where is it? I think it got closed. So these are the kind of errors you will be getting under exceptions. So some of these some of this may be caught by this compiler, and some of this may not be found by the compiler. So some which are found by JVM are handled by the JVM itself. You don't need to handle them. I mean, there is no need to handle them, but you can handle them. But what I'm saying is they are handled by JVM. But these compilation errors, you need to handle them. Handle in the sense, see if the program stops abnormally and the other, whatever the remaining program that is not executed. You should, if the program is stopping, you need to stop it, how do I say, meaningfully. I mean that not like if the file is closed. I mean if the file is open and you are working on it and the program stops abnormally and the file is kept open, which is like a memory wastage. So if there is an error occurred, you have to handle that error and you need to close that file, whatever the file you are working on it. That means closing meaningfully. I think you got my point. So the errors which occur at the compilation time, you need to handle them. That is what we call that exception handling. Okay, handling, right? So till now you got my point, right? I think I told you 2 to 3 points. You got it right till now? Oh, someone, when time means output. Yeah, 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 very good. And reminding people also, just try to respond, at least if you have doubts or if you want me to repeat it, I can repeat it. See, if you move on to the next topic, and then let's say if we are entering into the project and there is a concept called exception where we try to include it in our project. In our project, there is exception where we caught the exception and then we'll write those exception handling things. And whenever I try to write that, you will be like, what is this? How do I write it? So if you now practice it, just as I said, we'll practice the concept beforehand. So if you are comfortable with it right now, then we can do that easily in our program. So ask me if you have something in your mind, okay? So yeah, what are we discussing? Yeah, compilation and interpretation. The interpretation is nothing but runtime. So yeah, now this is 2 times. Now we'll again go here and take a minute and read this. Like reasons of exceptions. There are like outside. I mean, there are some physical activities that may cause exceptions, and there are some internal errors. Errors in the sense I just said, like there is the memory, insufficient memory, or file not found. And physical activities in the sense you may lose the network, like that, or your system is device failure, which we call. Okay, I think you completed this slide reading it. I mean, you just now get an idea of what is exception. Or you want me to explain it with example? Just raise your hand. I'll tell the example. I just want you to know just what is exception right now. If you know that what is exception, then we can move like types. Okay. So there is a parent class called throwable. So what happens is, I'll tell you it. So let's say you got some error inside a method. You know method, right? So this is a method. Let's say this is a method called division, and let's say you got some error here, error or exception. What happens is whenever an error occurs, whenever an exception occurs, by default, Java will create an object of that exception using exception class. There are predefined classes, like, right, which you will use here. See, there is a, let's say here, this is a throwable, right? This is a throwable is a predefined class. Exception is a predefined class. So whenever you get an error, it will create an object out of it. So inside that object, you will have the details about the error. So it will create an object of whatever the error that came. It will create an object for it, and using that object, you will pass this object to I mean, using this object, you can handle the error. Let's say you got some, okay, you got some divided by zero error where I just explained, like whenever you divided with zero, you will get like arithmetic exception or divided by zero exception. So you will, this Java will create an object of it, and you, whenever you say object dot get name, get message, you will get the message whatever the exception, like the name of the exception and the information about the exception you will get. So using this, using what this is a use of Java, right? So you can use this object to handle the exception we got. So exception is by default, like it is a predefined thing. Whatever I just talked, it is a predefined thing. This object is created. This object is created by the Java itself. So using this object, we'll handle our exceptions. How we can use try catch, we'll use finally, and we'll use throw throws. Okay, I'll explain it each and everything with an example. I'm telling you, it will create an object of whatever the exception that we can encounter. Okay, so as I said, exceptions are two times. IO exception in the sense compile time exception and runtime exceptions, and there are some things called error. So if the program stops abnormally, that may be the cause of two things. One is exception and the other one is error. So if it is error, we cannot do anything. That means we cannot handle it. We cannot recover it. Recover it in the sense we cannot, like, let's say, uh, repair it. Okay, I mean we cannot. I mean, how do I say? We cannot execute the same program without changing anything. We cannot execute the same program if it is an error. Okay, error. Some examples of error is, let's say, there is a compatibility error. You are using some library, okay, array library of arrays, and you are using a different version of it, which is not compatible with your Eclipse IDE right now. Will your program execute whatever you do unless you change that version, right? You cannot handle it unless you change that version. You cannot make your program run. This is an example of error, compatibility error, we call it as. So errors cannot be handled unless the root reason for it is resolved. You cannot handle error. Only the thing you can do is you can handle the exceptions. So yeah, so parent throwable is the parent class. These are all predefined classes actually. So why we have these predefined classes again? That is because if you get an error or if your program stops abnormally, you can use these classes to find out the cause for them, to find out the cause of the error in your program. That is the basic use of these predefined classes. I hope you understand, you got my point. They won't solve or do anything, just you will know what kind of error you got or what kind of how do you handle. You can get an idea using these predefined classes. Using this exception class, you can know what kind of exception your program got. Using this throwable class, you can do many more things. I'll explain it. So now you should know the difference between error and exception. As I said, errors cannot be handled. Irrecoverable. Yeah, that is the correct word. You cannot recover your and library incompatibility. Infinite recursion. You all know about recursion, right? Recursion. What is recursion? Can anyone say? We'll use it in methods, right? What is recursion? Anyone? There is a function, and the function calls itself. Uh, this is not our topic, but I'll tell you quickly what is recursion. Let's say you have a program called add, and inside it you are doing something like a plus b equal to a plus b and c equal to a plus b. And you are calling this add. Now what is happening inside the add? You are calling this add. So calling the function itself, this function itself calls add again. This is recursion, and there should be a stop condition for it too. Just like loops, you need to stop it somewhere. Otherwise, you will get infinite recursion. The program, the compiler turns around here itself. It won't go to next step. Yeah, yeah, very good, Nishan. Yeah, I'm seeing some new names. Others to try to be active. Okay. Mm, okay. Where are we? So that those are the errors where we can't recover them, and exceptions we can handle them easily. And how do we handle them? I'll tell you now. So quickly see this slide. They gave the examples of errors like running out of memory, memory leaks, stack overflow, library incompatibility, and exceptions. See, when an exception occurs within a method, it creates an object. This object is called exception object. This is by default. It will. So using this exception object, we will handle that exception. How do we handle it? We can have different methods like try, catch, throws. I'll show you. So what that object has, see, read this. This is very important. That object contains the name and description of the exception and the state of the program when the exception occurred. Like at what line the program is there and at what stage the program is there when the exception occurs. That object contains that. Yeah, syntax error is a compile time error. Oh, sorry. Yeah, very good. Try catch, finally block. Yeah, we can handle them. But errors, these we can't handle them. Okay? You understand the difference between errors and exception? Now there are other types too in exceptions like checkable and uncheckable. If it is runtime, we call it as uncheckable. If it is compile time, IO exception, then that is checkable. Okay. So wait. Checked exceptions, that means they can be checked. That means they are thrown at the compile time. At the compile time itself, we can able to see those exceptions. Only at the runtime, if you are seeing it after the compilation has been done, and at the runtime, if you are seeing those exceptions, we call it as uncheckable. There are different names, but don't get confused. Uncheckable means they are not checked at compile time. Only at runtime they are checked. So that's why they are called as uncheckable. Checkable means they are checked at compile time. Okay. And yeah. And again, there are again another type. Oh. So again in exceptions, oops. So again in exceptions, we have predefined and user defined. Anything we have, right? Like just in packages, how there are certain types which are already defined. So just like that, there are predefined and there are user defined. So some exceptions which they already know that, like as I said, arithmetic exception, file not found exception, null pointer exception. These are all predefined. Like if we get that exception, since it is already defined, we can use that exception. But there are user defined exceptions where like some exceptions that are maybe not known by the Java compiler, we define them, we throw them using throws keyword. Those we call them as, we can create our own exception. Let's say let's say some other user trying to access your program data or some method, then you will say whenever the method is called, you will say like throw this method is not accessible whenever they try to call your method. These are user defined exceptions you can create using throws keyword. And predefined, just as I said, they're already defined before and you can use them. So it's already 10:07. Since I already explained about exceptions, we'll see the example programs in tomorrow's class. Okay, like I'll tell a program for everything. And okay, since we already here, I'll just Ma'am, explain enum equal final and communication. Yeah, sure. Everything will be covered. Don't worry. Yeah, everything will be covered. Okay, I'm going like concept after concept, so everything will be covered. And someone yesterday asked me about Fibonacci series. I thought of doing it today after loops, and then I forgot. The time is already up. Since we are already here, I'll show you example of this exception, or else we will forget for tomorrow. I'll say, I okay, class. Let's say about exceptions, right? If I say exceptions. Let's say I have right now I am like strongly focusing on whatever that is included in the project. We will cover the other things too, but whatever that are necessary for our project, that are included in project, are important for us right now. We will be trying to solve others too, but you need to learn quickly. See, if I try to include all the concepts in, we have only 60 days. If I try to include everything, then it will be like fast, a little bit fast compared to now. So you will be quickly learning everything without confusing. So how do you get that quick learning? Only when you practice it. So exception P, or you can say whatever you want. You will say P dot. You say let me see. Okay, I'll print it actually. Not out dot print in the P dot let me see. Okay. It's like very simple one, just to show you the example of how this exception. So what is this? Divided by 0. That is a message. Here it created an object for this exception. This is an exception, right? If I didn't keep that in try or catch block, what happens? We'll see that too. The program will surely terminates without any say, this line. The program stopped at in here. This is an abnormal case. Okay, so you need to handle that. You need to handle it so the program can continue to other steps. If there are some steps after this, they won't be executed. So if you handle it correctly, then everything will be executed. This is an example of exception. So in exception C, and again, you will get this is the Java dot arithmetic exception, and they are inside the lang package. Have you imported that lang package? But they came. Why? Because it is already predefined. As I said, some packages you just don't need to import them. They're already by default they're imported. So in which line? It is line 13. It will show you the error line. Try doing some trying on your own. I mean, just try something new when you practice. Anything else in up to now? If you have any doubts, ask me or you can leave. Thank you for today's class. Keep on practicing. That is what I can say. Even if you didn't practice till yesterday, start from today. Okay, because these are all the basic topics. When you enter into the project and if you start, then it will be very difficult for you to cope up with me. because I'll be fast because we all know the concepts. Then we can. There is no need to again stop and explain the concept. I'll just keep on coding, and you will be confused like what is this, what is this. So if every concept you practice before, then you will be like, okay, this is good. See, if you don't have anything else to ask, you can leave. If you have any doubts, you can stay back and unmute yourself and ask, or you can keep that in chat window. I'll be waiting for 2 more minutes.